I will read an article by Pavel Ulyanov, which does a great job of clarifying how the world was organized before the 18th century, about which we know almost nothing. It's been erased, so only through these investigations can we reconstruct the true picture of how things really were. The world's geography before the nuclear war, using examples from ancient architecture and star fortresses. The time frame of the past nuclear war gradually took shape. The peak occurred between 1780 and 1816, and by 1816 the nuclear winter had already begun. On Wikipedia, we can look up the year without a summer, when unusually cold weather prevailed in Western Europe and North America. To this day, it remains the coldest year. First, the documented blah blah blah, well, basically they describe the consequences of nuclear winter. The Northern Hemisphere experienced summer frost for 3 years. I want to show in the article that the world was already global before this war began, using the example of the engineering and architectural school, which was unified for the entire planet. At this point, we can absolutely take two facts into account. Fact 1. Before the war of 1780 to 1816, most cities on the planet were built in a single classical style. I mean residential real estate. Buildings now classified as temple structures and structures of unknown purpose, such as the pyramids of Giza and the Mayan pyramids. They are different. In Western Europe, ancient architecture has been preserved the best compared to the rest of the world. Most cities were completely destroyed. Some were partially damaged. That's why ancient buildings have survived to this day and are presented as colonial architecture. That's, of course, nonsense. Those who were reformatting the world had no time to build beautiful buildings according to fancy designs during constant uprisings and warfare. Fact number 2. All ancient cities on the planet were surrounded by gigantic cyclopean structures in the shape of stars, which are now called bastion fortifications. The construction of such a star near a large city often matched the city's own construction volume. Millions of cubic meters of earthworks and millions of cubic meters of building stone, and the stone was finally processed using industrial machine methods. The fortification functions of the stars can be called into question, because there are many markers that render these functions meaningless, but more on that later. By using pictures, you can verify the truth of the two facts mentioned above, and also learn that by implementing the principle of divide and conquer, the current rulers who won this war have been diligently wiping ancient-style cities off the face of the earth for 200 years now, especially the stars. This is done in order to break the unified architectural field of the planet so that the modern heritage does not realize that the world was already global before. Let's check fact number 1. Here, Anglo-French troops are building a palace in the colonial style in China. Caption under the photo at the link translation. Something like the capture of a building during the Opium Wars. Here was the palace in China, Yanmigian, and after the visit by Anglo-French troops, it became like this. England fought more than 200 wars in the middle and at the end of the 19th century. Even if it did not participate in a war directly, its interests were always present indirectly. It won everywhere, becoming an empire where the sun never sets. All these wars look more like punitive sweeps of the remnants of armed forces on territories destroyed by nuclear war and the establishment of occupation administrations there. Clearly, such an extensive global transformation would have been impossible without complete military and technological dominance. Tokyo, a colonial-style building. Tokyo again, completely European cities. High-rise building, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 7 floors here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 floors. Who could live in a 7-story building until the 17th century? Yokohama. Again Yokohama. What kind of Japan is that? Arito Japan. Also the name Arito Taari. We have buildings like this everywhere. Buenos Aires, Argentina. The same columns, everything is the same. Another photo of Buenos Aires. Can you believe it? How much stone, how many white stone buildings are there? Buenos Aires again. Who would say this isn't in the United States? Something's been built? Santiago, Chile. With those columns, you'd think about what kind of civilization is there. Chile again. Fountains, pumps, sewage systems. Amazing. Chicago, 19th century. Can you believe that such a complex could have been designed and carved out of marble? The descendants of conquistadors who, suffering from scurvy, sailed on wooden vessels for 6 months to America? Is that even possible if all of this was working before those conquistadors? What kind of civilization was that? Chicago, United States of America. There was Tartaria there at that time, so why not? All these columns, all these sculptures. I highly recommend this article, where the author analyzes the details of building facades in the antique style. Ancient cities, comparison and analysis. The author also explains that everything everywhere was made in the same style. Seattle, United States of America. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 floors of the building. Everything is made for glass, which means glass existed before the 18th century. Sevastopol, 1853. It's the same. All the streets is Shalandi full of kefal, also Sevastopol. Another angle. That was quite a city, but how did they build it? Moscow, Russia. Now that's a building, that's impressive, that's right, Omsk, Russia. Well, all the buildings are like that. The only thing is, the road isn't paved with asphalt. Perm, Russia. Kherson. Vladivostok, Russia. American troops in Vladivostok in 1922. That's when they were planning to carve Russia up into little pieces. Simferopol, Russia. Another Simferopol. Saratov. Taganrog. Those columns standing there are impressive. 1, 2, 3, 4. Kiev, Ukraine. Kiev again. That's the type of summer houses people built for themselves in the past. Kiev again. The same colonial style. Odessa. Now that's impressive. A city theater. Tehran. So how is Tehran different from Odessa? Hanoi, Vietnam. Which Vietnamese people built this? In the 18th century? Saigon. Vietnam. Clearly it wasn't the Vietnamese who lived here. Padang, Indonesia. Indonesia's scale is impressive, far surpassing England's. They probably never had buildings like this in England. What columns? Colombia is rich. Manila, Philippines, Karachi, Pakistan. Now that's impressive, but clearly this one starts with a K. There are Europeans in the frame. There are no Indians or Pakistanis here. Again, Pakistan, Shanghai, China, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 floors. Now that's a spire and that's a capital. And also Shanghai, Managua, Nicaragua. Well, who would say this isn't St. Petersburg? The Prince of Wales entered Kolkata, India with the army, where the colonial-style palace was already standing. Kolkata, India. No Indians, Kolkata, the year 1813. What kind of buildings have monuments to Lenin? Everything as it should be. Cape Town, South Africa. Please, once again, Cape Town, Africa. I need black people. Seoul, Korea. So these are our roots again, and Melbourne, Australia. But look at what the local kangaroos and aborigines have built here. Brisbane, Australia. Yes, Oaxaca, Mexico, Mexico City, Mexico, Toronto, Canada. And again, Toronto, Montreal, Canada. Again, the same columns, the same Peter. Phuket, Thailand. This list should also include all the destroyed cities that the manipulator assigned the status of ancient Greek and ancient Roman. All of this is absolute nonsense. They were destroyed 200 or 300 years ago. Simply because of the desert and the Union, life on the ruins of such cities mostly did not resume. Timgad, Algeria, Africa. Palmyra. Zoom in. What is it made of? The colonial buildings of Palmyra, which are being passed off as ancient antiquities, have been destroyed. Compare the buildings. Their design and original intended purpose are identical. Lebanon, Baalbek. Let's count the columns from the end. 5, 6, 7, 8. Orthodox Cathedral of St. Peter and Paul, Sevastopol. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Absolutely the same, only destroyed. And this is the old museum in Kirch on Mount Mithridat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Staritza, Valgala, Regensburg, Germany. 8. Temple of Poseidon, Italy, ancient antiquity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Roof. Absolutely the same, exactly identical. This is presented as antiquity, as an ancient artifact. That's how it is. Parthenon, Nashville, United States of America. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, how beautiful it is, and it's not ancient at all. Temple of Apollo in Delphi. There are 6 on the end. The roof is ruined. Oh, this is ancient antiquity, 1,000 years old. Temple of Theseus in Vienna, Austria, ancient antiquity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, identical like pancakes stamped out with carbon paper. Temple of Hephaestus in Athens, also 6 elders. Hephaestus, ancient, thousands of years old. Temple of Garni in Armenia. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, globally. You could go on endlessly. The reader can see this for himself. To do this, it's enough to type the name of any more or less large city in Google, plus the keyword, or city plus 19th century, and click Show Images. Residential real estate will have a similar appearance, featuring arches, pilasters, turrets, columns, and balustrades. For example, look at the images using the keywords mentioned here. What should you pay attention to? The official history lies saying that all these buildings were built in the mid to late 19th century. At that time, cameras were already widely used. You won't find photos of the construction of any serious structure anywhere. Although they were being built en masse at that time, there was a real construction boom, judging by all of this. But in reality, the whole world was at war in the 19th century. Let's look at the list of 19th century wars. Here are the wars from 1800 to 1809. On War 2, 3, War 3rd Collection 1st Station War from 1810 to 1819. In the following decades, England did not play around. England, Swedish, Colombian, Mexican, Argentine, Korean Revolution, Oman, Saudi War, Venezuelan War, from 1820 to 1829 the next decade, to 1830, Egyptian invasion of Sudan, Spanish Civil War. That is, every year someone was at war with someone else. Incessant war plagued the 1830s with conflicts like the Israeli, Belgian, French and Polish uprisings. Everyone was fighting from 1940 to 1950, the Colombian Civil War, the First Opium War, the Spanish Civil War. Everyone has been fighting for many years. The French expedition, that is, everyone is constantly at war. From 1950 to 1960 to 1960 to 1970, from 1970 to 1980, from 1980 to 1990. The First Anglo-Boer War, the Franco-Tunisian War, the British War, the English are fighting everywhere. The whole world is fighting against them. The English are winning. The Anglo-Zanzibar War. Zanzibar even fought against England. The Anglo-French. So wow, the civil war in Venezuela, basically everyone is fighting everywhere against everyone. That's crazy. And at the same time, the whole world was supposedly being massively built up with ancient buildings, many of which can't even be built today. Theaters and operas aren't built during times of war and unrest. In almost all photographs from the 19th century, you see bearded men in worn-out clothes and shapeless old boots. Mostly they do earthworks, haul soil in wheelbarrows, use rather primitive lifting cranes made of logs and sometimes steam engines for earth moving. But there are no photographs where you can clearly see a half-built building like the Vienna Opera. Feed Google and look at the photos and pictures using the key phrases I mentioned, and you'll see that these ancient buildings were not built in the 19th century. Let's move on to factor number 2, star forts. They exist on every continent except Australia. In Australia, they have been completely destroyed, which is surprising, and very few people know about them. To date, about 1,000 have been discovered. In this vContact group, you can look at satellite images of several hundred of these sites, as well as city plans made in the 17th and 18th centuries. You definitely need to look at the satellite images and old city plans to understand the scale of stone construction in the past and to realize the unity of standards in the engineering and architectural field of that time. I can't upload 500 photos here. You can download a file with star markers at this link. So, the most famous star-shaped site in Russia is the Petropavlovskaya Fortress. It's the sole well-preserved one. Hundreds or thousands have been destroyed over the last 2 centuries. The outer slope of such a star is often lined with high-quality stonework, with blocks weighing a ton or more. In some cases, the slope is made of earth. The entrance gates to star forts are often made of stone, with very high-quality milling work. Almost all triumphal arches in the world are entrance gates through a wall into former stars. Inside and outside, there are stone infrastructures similar to the Peter and Paul Fortress. In Europe, small star-shaped towns have been perfectly preserved, but they look like this. Palmanova Fortress. On the former Union of Soviet Socialist Republics is territory. This is how the Brest Fortress appears. The star's diameter is 2 kilometers, and its interior contains houses resembling those in the above 2 images. Now, everything has been reduced to dust. This is a common trend for nearly all cities globally. The stars and their residential infrastructure have been best preserved in Western and, to a lesser degree, Eastern Europe. Looking at modern cities through Google and Earth, the pathological urge of the manipulator to destroy star systems is striking. In Europe, they dismantled them carefully, preserving the surrounding infrastructure. For example, I'll show 3 European cities, Turin, Strasbourg and Antwerp, but this rule applies to any city. The plan of Turin in 1799. Turin in 1682. Turin? No. You won't find any traces of this giant star-shaped wall and canal. Extensive efforts were made to dismantle them to conceal the existence of such structures. Plan of Strasbourg. Strasbourg in 1644. Strasbourg now has the basilica with the spire and canals in place, but the walls with bastions are gone. Strasbourg from satellite. The wall with bastions has been carefully dismantled. Antwerpen plan from 1642. It is tilted by 90 degrees. The star-shaped wall spans 5.7 kilometers from left to right, making it an enormous structure. The second plan of Antwerpen. You see, at the bottom and on the right, there are 7 forts marked with diamonds. Let's examine a satellite image, which reveals that only a canal is left from the wall. Only 8 earthen mounds outlined in red remain from the forts. Each fort is 600 meters wide. The situation is much worse in territories like Russia, Ukraine, Belarus and Kazakhstan. Nearly all authentic ancient buildings were destroyed, leaving the area leveled. All these Stalinkas and Khrushchevkas are quickly built barracks, basically hastily constructed according to standard designs so that the surviving population could have a place to stay and demographically support the workforce numbers. Moscow, 17th century. I think that inside the ring at that time the architecture was much more grand than in Turin and Paris, Kiev. A fragment of a little house has survived, already a shabby new building, and inside there are little attached houses. They're quite funny. Orenburg. I overlaid the plan of Orenburg onto a satellite image. Ochakov. Do you remember the times of Ochakov and the conquest of Crimea by Griboyedov? Ochakov overlaid the plan onto the image of Ismail. Ismail with Sputnik. Here are the remains. Kherson. In Kherson, Sputnik reports that the manipulator enjoys constructing stadiums where star citadels once stood in Odessa. Plan Slutsk, Belarus. Slutsk satellite photo. I overlaid the plan on the photo. In Ukraine, the ancient star-shaped city of Dachi is situated on the shore of the Sea of Azov, near the Petrovskaya fortress and Berdyansk. Plan of the Petrovskaya fortress. Russia, near Rostov, everything here has been cleared out. Near Rostov there was a city with a 6-bastion star. Here, for comparison, is a similar one in Croatia, also with 6 bastions. The city is called Karlovok. Karlovok, in our time. They compared. Now let's assess the cynicism of the Western media, who reproach Slavs and other peoples for not being able to build anything and for living in backwardness. But it was done by their own hands, which we'll discuss later. And here is a star in northern Kazakhstan that speaks for itself, with the surrounding infrastructure destroyed by 3 nuclear explosions. Later, a small village called Stanovoy appeared on the ashes, and the second star is in the Omsk region. Nearby lies a crater over 1 kilometer wide. I circled the star in red. The template for searching old city maps is simple. In different languages, feed Google the phrase city, old map, city, ancient map, city, antique map. Try it in Latin, French, Spanish and German and click show images. If the map was made before the end of the 18th century, the city will have a star-shaped wall outline.